All right, the next thing we're going to talk about is newspaper and photography. The first camera ever was built in 1816. This is it right here. And there's kind of a question. If that's the first camera ever, then how do we have a picture of it? Well, the picture was taken by the second camera ever, basically, which was way better quality than the first camera, let me tell you. So anyway, in 2 minutes in today's time with our phones, we take more pictures than all of the pictures taken in the 1800s combined. Okay, so that's an interesting statistic for you. So the first camera took the first picture ever, which is this one, which is a horrible picture. Okay, we see one person here, I think, and also some buildings and what looks to be some kind of a ledge. I'm not even sure what it is, really. Okay, but it was also the first selfie ever, as well. Okay, this guy, you know, pressing the button remotely, so he took a selfie. Now, as time went on, the pictures got clearer, and the way that cameras work is that the shutter opens and it collects light, and then it imprints that light onto film. Well, in the early days, I mean, photography was very new, obviously, and people really wanted family photos. It was probably, I mean, most people in the late 1800s only had one photograph ever taken of them. So when a family member died, oftentimes what they would do is they would have a family photo with the dead guy, okay, or the dead girl. And they would actually open their eyes up, okay, and you can usually tell which one they are. So this is one of those photos. Yeah. So which one's the dead one, y'all?
The middle.
Yep, the lady in the middle, staring off into nothing, literally. Anyway, so that was a common thing to have photos with dead family members in the 1800s. And of course, as cameras became more common and mass-produced, they became cheaper and more people had them, so we kind of see the end of dead photos. All right, so we have some early photographs that are colorized right here. One of the big things that really helped out the photography, or excuse me, the newspapers, is the introduction of photos. Because before that, all they had was drawings. You know, if you went to go see President Jackson or something like that, give a speech, well, the artist would have to draw President Jackson giving the speech, you know. So anyway, George Eastman Kodak became very famous for inventing the world's first personal camera. I mean, the early cameras weighed, you know, the first camera weighed over 1,000 pounds, right? You saw the size of that thing. A typical camera usually weighed about 100, and then George Eastman Kodak makes the Kodak camera, this little tiny box that weighs less than 5 pounds and it could fit in your pocket. And that is when photojournalism just exploded, okay? Two of the guys that took advantage of that was these two guys, okay? This is Joseph Pulitzer. You've heard of him before. He's the guy that saved the Statue of Liberty last chapter by doing the fundraiser. He's the good guy, okay? He's the good journalist. And he definitely paid photographers to go out there and get photographs for his newspaper. The other guy is William Randolph Hearst, the richest newspaper guy ever in American history. Well, in world history, actually. So at that time. So Hearst had a different thing. He didn't want to just tell the facts. He said, facts are boring, man. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to expound on the facts. I'm going to stretch the truth. I'm going to stretch it so much that it bursts. And people are going to love this. And he was right. He made way more money than Joseph Pulitzer after a while. So he also, he did really crazy stuff involving violence, scandals, fake news, whatever you want to call it. And also he said that at one point the U.S. Navy had invaded Mars, okay, on a regular Navy ship. I don't know how they got out into, you know, zero gravity and no atmosphere and survived the 9-month trip or whatever. Well, probably a 9-year trip at that speed. But anyway, and he also helped our president, President McKinley, to start the Spanish-American War, which we're going to cover in next chapter. Okay? So other really cool things that are happening at the turn of the century is airplanes. Okay? At Kill Devil Hills in North Carolina, two brothers made the first airplane. Orville and Wilbur Wright, and these are actually colorized photographs of them flying. This is actually the first flight ever in human history. First heavier than air flight, that is. Because we had been flying for centuries before this using other things, like hot air balloons, but that doesn't really count, okay, not for this. Anyway, so the first flight was 120 feet, took 12 seconds, and the president at the time in 1903 was Mr. Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt. Now, I'm going to teach you a lot about Teddy Roosevelt in the next chapter. He is my favorite president, and I'll just give you a little bit of preview of why he's my favorite president, okay, one of the reasons. So he heard the first airplane had been flown. He went to North Carolina to see the airplane as president. And after watching them fly it a few times, and they landed, and they said, "What do you think, Mr. President?" He said, "Great, now show me how to fly it." And so Teddy Roosevelt figured out how to fly the airplane, and he's the first president that ever flew an airplane, and it just so happened to be the first experimental airplane. He actually flew this actual airplane. This airplane is in the Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C. It has its own room, okay? I had no idea it was there. I was walking through the Aviation Museum there, and I just walked into the room, and there it is, the Wright brothers plane just sitting there, all reconstructed. It looks just like this. There's a little model of one of the brothers laying down just like this. I think they modeled it off of this photograph, actually. So we got one more Wright brother photograph right here. See, they're using the hills to get extra air time. You know, if you launch it off the top of a hill, then you have farther for it to glide, okay? But it was made mainly using canvas, like you paint on, and also some bicycle parts, because they couldn't put a heavy engine on, because every pound really mattered to get this thing up in the air. And aviation, which is the science of flying, advanced rapidly after this. Okay, by World War I, which is 1914, we already have planes that are capable of carrying guns and bombs and stuff like that. Okay, so